Hey, and welcome to the Stories Unveiled podcast, where we talk about the purpose in every story and how to live in freedom from your past. I'm your host, Ashley Sears, and each episode you're invited into a conversation about real life between me and a friend. I believe if an issue is addressed in the Bible, then it's important to create a safe and supportive space to discuss it. While some of these conversations are not easy, I do believe they are worth it. If you like what you hear, please visit our ministry at storiesunveiledconference.com. Thank you for joining today.
This episode is brought to you in part by Pure Desire Ministries. Lives and relationships are being destroyed by sexual brokenness, pornography, and betrayal trauma. Pure Desire believes you were designed to live a life without sexual brokenness and the effects it can have on your future. After working with men, women, and churches for over 20 years, Pure Desire has developed a comprehensive plan to breaking free, healing relationships, and getting your life back from sexual brokenness and betrayal trauma. Through recovery and healing groups, a clinical program, and partnerships, Pure Desire is helping the church effectively address unwanted sexual behaviors, betrayal trauma, and the impact of sexual brokenness. To join a group, start counseling, or get more information, go to puredesire.org. You can take your life back from sexual brokenness and betrayal trauma. Start your journey of healing today.
In this episode, Jenn Howie and I have a conversation about the trauma of deception in marriage, rebuilding after a community scandal, and learning to love yourself through the eyes of Christ. Jenn Howie is a life coach, betrayal recovery coach, and body image coach. She has a passion for helping women live a life of freedom and to see themselves the way God sees them. Jenn is a mom, wife, and friend who lives authentically and unashamedly for Jesus. This episode contains mature content, so mature ears are advised. But I pray you lean into this conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Jenn, thanks so much for joining me today.
I am so happy to be here, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me.
So we're going to jump right in, and I'm going to start off kind of going way back to the beginning, kind of a funny question, but I guess it does lend itself to your story. But when we're young, we usually have a plan for our life, or at the very least, we have some sort of vision. I know when I was a little girl, I had a vision for my life and what I thought my life was going to look like. Tell me briefly how you envisioned your life.
Okay, so this is something you do not know about me.
Okay.
And this is something I've never shared publicly. And I'm really embarrassed to actually share it, but I value transparency and vulnerability. So here I go. Okay.
I love it.
So, oh my gosh. When I graduated high school, I went to junior college, and I decided that I was either going to be an actress or I was going to be a wife. Okay. I mean... And yeah, right. Yeah. But my first step was I was going to be a raiderette. As it turns out, you actually have to have talent to do stuff like that. And you're still laughing.
You're right. I did not know that about you.
No, most people don't. I'm even tearing up with laughter as I say it now because most people don't know that. I love it. Okay, but I decided not to go that route because, again, not enough talent. Believe it or not, you have to have talent to do that. And also I decided acting seemed really hard and unlikely. But I had been dating this boy since I was in 8th grade. I had moved next door to him. And honestly, I knew from the moment I saw him that I was going to marry him. I knew. Mm-hmm. And we went all through high school together. And here I am now graduating high school, deciding I'm not going to be a raiderette. And so that's kind of what I knew I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be married. I knew I wanted to have kids. I knew I wanted to be a part of a family. That was how God had wired me. And that was honestly my plan. Totally. Yeah.
So no raiderette, not in the cards.
Nope.
Actress kind of got crossed off the list, but wife. Like you knew that a wife and a mom was something you wanted to have a family, be in a family, raise a family.
I did. Yeah.
And that was a huge part of your vision. So we're just going to fast forward. And, obviously in your intro, I said that you are a wife and mom, but we know that about you. However, does your life look at all even remotely close to what you just described?
It's so identical. I mean, no, it doesn't. Like for most of us, it really didn't turn out the way any of us really planned. And most of that started, as with any dating couple going through high school, you have those on again, off again moments.
Yeah.
And during one of our off again moments, I was 19 and I had gone to a party and I had been slipped a date rape drug and woke up in the act of being sexually violated. And it was through that experience that I had decided I never want this off again thing. I want the person I dated in high school. He is safe. He is predictable. I never, ever, ever want to be in the dating field. So that's really what played a lot into my decision into getting married. Was I was so afraid of what was out there. I wanted the person that I knew. I never wanted to be exposed again to anybody who I didn't know their past. I didn't know their character. I didn't know their family background. So I went with the guaranteed thing. I went with the guaranteed safe choice, which was my husband. And so then I got married right at 20.
So, wow. You say I wanted something safe. I know that kind of plays a big role as like we're going to move forward here in just a moment. But you wanted a protector. You wanted somewhere that you could feel safe and be you and be protected.
Yes.
So you got married at 20. Tell me about that and about your husband at the time and what your marriage looked like.
So we got married young, obviously, and so that naivete was really helpful and can be really helpful in marriage, quite honestly, going into it. We had actually a really decent marriage. He was a really great father. We laughed a lot. We didn't have deep conversations. He wasn't one for really exploring feelings and that kind of thing. And he had a brief stint with pornography, and which I swept it under the rug. And then he also, at one point, it sounds like I just said we had a great marriage, and then here I am listing all these things. There were other things to the marriage. We never fought, which I actually thought was a great quality, as it turns out. Conflict avoidance was just really strong in the relationship. But and at one point, he had a thing going with our babysitter, and I decided that I was going to be a great Christian woman, and I was going to give God all the glory and show people how our marriage was going to heal from this babysitter experience. And what we ended up doing, like a lot of couples do, we eventually just kind of swept it under the rug.
Yeah.
And what, sort of manned up. We over spiritualized it and we under therapized it and just didn't do much with it. And it was really, then I think that in hindsight, where I really went wrong, because what happened is a couple of years later, a big paradigm shift took place. A big moment took place in our marriage, and that time of not dealing with his issues, his sexual issues, really turned into this moment that I think we're about to get into.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, tell me about that moment. Where did this paradigm shift happen? And I mean, quite honestly, it changed the trajectory of your life. Forever.
And many other people's lives.
And many other people's. Yes, you're right.
For sure.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So it was December 10th of 2005, and I was standing in the driveway with my husband and my two sons at the time, who were 7 and 10, and a cop car drove by, parked around the corner. Another cop car drove up, and then an unmarked car drove up behind them and parked right in front of our house. And they all started coming toward our home with very intentional looks on their face. And I was thinking, wow, they must be looking for a criminal or something. I mean, clearly they are here on purpose, and saw us standing outside and decided to stop and ask us. I had no idea that criminal would actually be my husband.
Yeah.
And they took him around the corner, had some questioning for him, brought him back around. I said, "What's going on?" And he says, "I don't know. I'm going to go answer some questions for them." And they were so kind enough. My kids were there. The cops were kind enough to take him around the corner and arrest him there. rather than in front of my children. So the kids run up to the car and they're like, "Where's Daddy going?" And
They thought it was cool.
Yeah, well, we were getting ready to go on vacation. We were just minutes away from driving to California at the time.
Man.
And where's Daddy going? And I said, "Oh, he's going to go answer some questions for the police." And my 10-year-old says to my 7-year-old, "Dad's going to get the bad guys." And they took off running into the house. And I was standing there, obviously still a little confused. And there was a woman standing there with a cop. And she says, "Hi, and my name is such and such. And Jen, I'm from CPS. And I need your kids to come with me." And I'd stand there kind of stunned for just a moment, and she says it again, "I need the boys to come with me." And it was in that moment that I realized that the cop that was still standing there wasn't for anyone else but for me if I did not comply.
Yeah.
So I knew that I needed to comply, and I began to cry, and she's like, calm down. You have to be calm for your kids. If they see you freaked out, they're going to get freaked out, and they need to know that they're safe." And I'm just like crying. I'm like, "Are you going to bring them back? Are you going to bring them back? Please tell me you're going to bring them back." And she tells me that she's going to. Of course, she can't guarantee that, but
of course.
She says, "Yes, I'm going to bring them back, but you need to go inside and tell them that it's safe to come with me." So I go inside and I tell the boys to go with the cop and the lady, and they all get in the car and they drive off, and I'm standing in the driveway. I can almost smell the heat in the air because it was a summer day. It was warm. I can hear those little summer bugs, those I don't know what they're called, not cascaded bugs, but you know the little bugs that make those sounds.
Like cicadas.
Cicada.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing those bugs, the click, click, click.
Yeah.
And I could feel the heat coming off the asphalt in the driveway. My husband's gone. My kids are gone. The van door's still open.
And you still don't know why.
And I don't know why.
Yeah.
And all I know in that moment is that my entire world changed. Like gut level, paradigm shift, everything changed, but I didn't know what it was yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you mind sharing, like, fast forward, what happened? And, you know, obviously there's rebuilding that has to happen after this moment. Like, there's pieces that you have to pick up and, you know, obviously invested in this. Like, did you get your kids back, and what did that look like, and all of those things. But this is a terrible, I can't imagine. I could not imagine having my husband and my children taken from me in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
It
became pretty public. You know, you're kind of forced to live in reality. Mm-hmm. You know, we were the top of the news. We lived in a small town at the time.
Yeah.
We were the top of the news for 3 months. And he was eventually sentenced to 20 years in prison for sexual crimes against minors. And so that whole process, yes, I did get the kids back.
Yeah. You did.
I forget to tell people that part. I did. I get my children back. I got them back within a few hours, you know. And
oh, good.
There's of course a ton of details that went into that experience, but yeah,
they needed to make sure your children were safe.
They needed to make sure that I had no involvement in the crime that he had committed, and so obviously I got them back, and they're now 25 and 28 and doing well in life. But at the time, you know, I didn't know that they were going to do well in life. All I knew was that my husband had this double life, and he's in prison now, and my kids have no father, and everyone's in trauma, and you know,
immediately, like it just happened,
out of nowhere,
in an instant.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of heart work that goes into this, like forgiveness and healing. And there's so much that goes into this, and that has to be done for you and for your children. What did that time look like for you, and how did that set you up for potential remarriage and like moving forward?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because the story of both of my marriages, and the first marriage, everything was so big. It was so surreal. It was almost cinematic.
Yeah.
Like you could almost hear the background music playing. It was just too, and maybe that was me, having a little bit of separation in my head,
disassociation.
Disassociation, compartmentalization, whatever it is. But I knew, like my gut knew, like this was too big for it to not be okay. It was too public for it not to be okay. And so my trust in God at that time was actually pretty strong. I believed he had a plan for me. I believe he had a plan for my boys. And I believe he had a father in mind for them as well. So during that time, I had a ton of support from the community, from the teachers, my kids' teachers, my friends, my church. I had a lot of support. And what's interesting about support is as amazing as it is, sometimes there's an element of enabling that can take place.
Yeah.
My ego was stroked a lot. I was on a pedestal for a lot of people. And as you're sitting on a pedestal, you don't always have the capacity to look at what work needs to be done inside of you, because what was being praised was my ability to endure and get through. And while there was some truth to that, that God was doing that in my life, I didn't really press into like some deep growth, but I did press into surviving, and I went to school and did the best I could as a mom to help my kids going through what they were going through. But it was really my second marriage that really produced some of that deep growth. And yes, forgiveness was a piece of this with my first husband as well. But because I was in such a mindset of moving on and moving forward, as you know, forgiveness is really done. It's a grief cycle.
Oh, yeah.
And it's done in layers. And so really forgiveness, even for my first husband, came in layers over the last, even last 18 years. So it's been a process of forgiveness.
So as you're kind of wading through all of these things, you do, like you said, both marriages. So you did get remarried.
Yes.
You did find a husband and a dad for your boys, and I have the pleasure of knowing him.
Yes.
Tell me about that. Tell me about the marriage that you're in now, your second marriage.
Okay, so at this point, I'm like 33.
Yeah.
And did you say I'm on the hunt for a marriage? Maybe I said that. Either way, apparently I was on the hunt, but I wasn't one.
I didn't mean that if that's what I said.
Well, I also wasn't much of a shopper either, because I went with the one and only guy I dated after that. So to this day, I hate shopping, and that apparently includes men. But
and what we know is that safety is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
You don't want to date around. You want to find a man that is safe to just be with. You didn't want to be in the dating pool, is what you said.
That is very true. And actually, that does come into play here, because after that experience, I knew exactly what I wanted. I didn't want someone to be all smoke and mirrors. So I wanted someone who was real. I wanted someone who had a faith background. I wanted someone who had a solid family. And I wanted someone who had been through something in their life and had overcome it and was transparent and honest about that. And I'm oddly enough, I was in choir with my now husband's father, so I knew his family. His mother, before we were even started talking, was my counselor after my first marriage. So I knew he came from that type of background. But I also, as I got to talking to Dan, I knew that he had a small bout of using alcohol to cope after his divorce, or through the breakdown of his marriage. And that's actually where we came together, because I was really feeling a lot of pressure from being on a pedestal. And I knew that he was very public about his coping behavior with alcohol. And I went up to him one night and I just said, gosh, I just really wish I could have a drink. But I think that, first of all, it took him by surprise because everyone's just like, she's just this perfect little Christian who's doing everything right. And that opened up the conversation for us both to be real about the part of us that we weren't really wanting to share with other people.
Yeah.
And we continued to grow in our relationship, and it was his transparency and vulnerability on the subject of coping in unhealthy ways from the fallout of his first marriage that checked that box for me. I was like, okay, this guy has been through something, and he's real about it. I found the person that doesn't lie.
Yeah.
Like, this is fantastic. Perfect.
I found the perfect person for me.
Yeah. Well, and he was also a really great dad. Just involved and engaged and kind, and I mean all the things that you and I that your listeners don't necessarily know about Dan. But really, he is a phenomenal person. So
Yes.
It was that plus the latter.
Yeah. So, okay. So you found a husband and you got married and now you have the life that you envisioned, right? As
Finally.
a mom.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah. Finally. Until
what?
can we put that cinematic music in the background
Yes.
again? Because
Yes.
here we
I could play a violin or something.
something. Yes.
Yeah.
So Dan and I had a good marriage. We also didn't fight, oddly enough.
Red
You know,
flag.
this whole conflict resolution thing wasn't even a thing that needed to be a thing because we didn't have any conflict.
Well, yeah. And so then how do you know how to fight well? Like,
There's nothing to fight over, Ashley.
well,
There's
okay.
just, you know.
I guess when there is nothing to fight over until you find something to fight
Well,
over.
yeah, you do. And
Fast forward.
Yeah. When you've got two people who just sweep everything under the rug again, and are conflict avoidant, there really isn't much to discuss.
It's true.
But essentially what happened with Dan, it was the night of December 12th of 2012, and we were unpacking groceries. Now, keep in mind, I had vowed to never be duped again.
Totally.
Like I'm not.
Because that was a big dupe in your first. I mean, how do you like?
Yeah. Oh,
It's-
you make a vow and you do all the things. You check all the internet history. You check all the text messages. You put tabs on mileage on the car. I mean, I did. I'm not going to make a list here, but you get where I'm going.
You did a lot of things, to ensure your safety.
Yes, extremely hypervigilant. I'm blonde, but I'm not a dumb blonde.
Right.
I'm like, I did all the things, people. I did all the things to not be duped again. But here we are, December 12th of 2012. We're getting out of the car, and he's unpacking the groceries from the back. And out of my hypervigilance that I continue to have, I scrolled to see the call history on his phone. Keep in mind, I didn't really have anything. I didn't have any suspicions. It was just this habit I was in. And I found a number that had been either dialed or missed call like 10 times in a row.
Wow.
Yeah, the heart starts racing.
Of course it does.
And I dial the number. Woman answers. We're both very quiet.
Her too.
Yeah. We both know what's going on in this moment.
Yeah. And she didn't beforehand either.
I don't know if you know Dan's history.
Yeah.
I don't know if she, I think she knew I existed. Yes.
Okay.
But I don't think she was expecting me to call from his phone.
Totally.
So we go inside. I do a very poor job of beating around the bush to see if he's going to admit things, and he didn't. And then finally he did. And I had one of those moments in the bathroom where your body can't take the stress anymore, and it's just shaking uncontrollably, you know. Just completely, just so heartbroken. Like, oh my gosh, like this was the guy. He was the reward to the public scandal. Like, how can this guy? I understand the other guy kind of because he didn't deal with his stuff, but not this guy, not this one. And I just didn't understand it. And then we went out into the living room and we sat around the Christmas tree, and we were supposed to wrap presents that night.
Right.
And I refer to that moment being more like he was unwrapping our marriage. And he went on to share an entire secret life that he had, a duplicate life that he had been living. Now, his actions weren't illegal, but they were there were porn sites and hookups and strip clubs and picture sharing and inappropriate conversations with coworkers. I mean, you just put it on a list. There's a good chance that that's what he was into.
Mm-hmm.
And
so hurtful. I mean,
it just leveled me. So the first time I was like, oh, God's got this. This is so big. God's got this. This time it wasn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was really angry. I'm like, you don't even care. Like, you gave me another one.
Yeah.
Like, what? I did it all right. And you gave me this.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was just such a heartbreaking thing, because I knew that he was a good man, but I didn't understand why this good man was doing such awful things.
Yeah. Yeah. So you and Dan are still married.
We are.
And you clearly didn't, sweep it under the rug or bury your head in the sand or do all of the things. And so talk to me a little bit about kind of how you got from there to where you are right now in your marriage.
Yeah. A lot of hard work.
Yeah.
As you can
a lot
imagine.
of heart work too.
Heart work,
right?
yeah. So he went to a counselor. Counselor said, I can help you with A, B, and C, but if you really want to get a handle on this sex issue, I recommend that you go to this group called Pure Desire. And it was at a local church in the area that we lived in. And so he started a Pure Desire group, and I started a Betrayal and Beyond group.
Yeah.
About a month after everything happened. And it was about 4 months after that we had a full disclosure, most of which I had already known at this point. But we had a full disclosure of what took place. And from there on, we started a year long of really intensive therapy through Pure Desire, the counselors there. And as with many people, you had your ups and downs and your relapses and all the things that go with that. I wish it was just as simple as going to counseling and having a little bit of support, but recovering a marriage, any marriage, is incredibly difficult. But recovering from betrayal, because it's multidimensional, betrayal isn't just affecting the now, it's affecting everything that you knew about your past, everything that you're experiencing currently, and all that will or will not be potentially in the future. So that's why they call it a multidimensional trauma. And so, recovering a marriage from that can be incredibly, incredibly difficult. I went everywhere from wanting to throat punch him when I walked past him in the hall, to wanting to connect. And really, the reason that is because you are connected to this person, but yet he's the person that hurt you, but he's also the person that has always been there to comfort you. And so understanding the dichotomy of how to reconcile this reality is incredibly difficult. So, yeah.
So you both were committed to change, but not you necessarily. He was committed to change. You were committed to him and to the marriage and to walking through healing and recovery to see what could that look like because of his commitment to healing and recovery and change, right?
Yeah, I would say that if I were to be perfectly honest, my commitment was on a day-by-day basis.
Yeah, that's fair.
I wasn't sure if I was going to be married or decide to be married at the end of the day. But, through the years, something I've really understood is that feelings aren't meant to be decision makers. Our values are meant to be our decision makers. So as long as I was going off of my values in that moment, those would be the things that would help me determine what I was going to do with my life today.
Yeah.
And so we did that. So he was committed to healing, and so was I. Part of what took place in this marriage breakdown for Dan and I was I really got to a place where I actually thought I was going to go crazy. I really thought the amount of trauma in my brain was measurable on a Richter scale. Like I thought I was going to go crazy. And then I also believed that you could die of a heartache. Sometimes that pain, that gnawing pain, sometimes felt like it was sort of clawing its way out of you. So it wasn't just a matter of healing our marriage, but a matter of the personal healing that we both, the personal journey we both went on. I liken it to like you guys are standing at the edge of a cavern, let's just like say, the Grand Canyon or whatever. And we both had to do this ripping apart and go our own separate paths. We did it together, but we walked our own paths to come around to the other side and reconnect. Because, there's this saying that the person that hurt you is not the person that can heal you. And so learning that my husband was a source of comfort, not the capital T source of comfort. Learning that my husband was a source of joy, not the source of joy. A source of healing, not the source of healing. Removing him from the position I had put him in to be my everything was a huge component of growth for me, because God's that was his rightful place.
Yeah.
And once I stopped putting, a godly job on a human man, then that was really helpful for me. And I was able to start walking with Dan, in his humanity. I had the privilege of not just walking through hard seasons of life with my husband, but it's over the last 10 years, it's been an honor to hold space for my husband, for when he breaks, when he presses in, and as he continually grows. There's a gal named, I think her name's Irene Rollins.
Yes.
She says it best when she says, I had the capacity to carry my husband's humanity. And I certainly didn't have it right away.
Right, of course not.
But that to me has been a big piece of the last 10 years. It's an honor to be with my husband, but and do life with him up to this point. I think initially many of us think, oh good, you guys have arrived. No, we haven't. It's nothing ends in ED in our marriage. That did not come out right. No words. Sorry. No words end in ED. Like we haven't arrived. We're arriving.
In past tense. Yeah.
Yes. Everything is present tense. Everything is ing.
Yes.
And
I got you.
Yeah. So we're growing.
Yeah.
We're healing. We're pursuing. It's nothing is past tense in our marriage. It can't be.
Right.
This side of heaven. It just can't be. We have to continue to grow in our relationship with one another as we hold space for each other's humanity, really, in the process.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like these experiences surely shaped you, and just the types of things that you've dealt with and had to process. And is there, in addition to the things that really you just shared, is there any other things that you learned from this or you've taken away from this that have just really shaped you and impacted you as you are kind of moving forward in this new space?
Yeah, that's a pretty loaded question, quite honestly. I feel like I'm still becoming ing.
Yeah.
And as a result, one thing, I went from really trusting God to really having kind of two middle fingers up at God.
Right.
To now coming to a place where I fully understand my value, my worth in the Lord and his love for me and my children. At one point, when my son, when they were little and he was rocking himself in the fetal position under the playground equipment, and the teachers are calling and saying, can you come get it? We can't get him to come out from under the playground. And I'm like, God, what are you doing? And then when I got to a point to where, I'm not going to name which kid did what, but let's just say that there was some arrest, some weed, and all the things that some teenagers do, and all the things I feared my kids would do, that I went through with them. And I look at things like both of my boys. If I had only known that things were going to be okay, I would have spent so much less time worrying. Of course, wouldn't we all?
Right.
But I've got one son who has gone from bongs to Bibles. He's now a preacher.
I love that.
They've got 2 kids. And
Can we name a podcast that?
Bongs to Bible. Yeah. You can have him next. I'm sure his would be an interesting story. I would love to hear my kids' version of this story.
They definitely have their own story.
They definitely do. And my other son is a tattoo artist. And so they're vastly different people with incredibly amazing gifts.
Yeah.
And if I had just known that it would be okay, if I had just known that, honestly, that my marriage would be okay and that I would be okay. But that's not the journey, is it?
No.
Ultimately, I think the biggest thing is to not be careful to not be attached to the outcome. Mm-hmm. And this sounds really Christian, easy, cheesy, but be attached to the one. And I mean that with all sincerity. If you know me, you know me that I hate Christianese, but I really truly mean that. The less we attach to the outcome, and the more we attach to God, the more we will realize the joy and the plans and believe the good things that He has for us. And it wasn't that long ago, so Dan and I have been in this process for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know if wasn't expecting to share this, but I will say I was at church a couple of weeks ago. They asked someone to come up, does anyone want prayer? I'm like, no, I don't want prayer. And like, you can hear it, like,
I'm fine.
Go forward.
Prayer.
I'm like, but my son is the pastor of prayer. And I'm like, he's on the other side. I'm not going to walk all the way to the front. And then he walks over to my side. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go up on the chorus. The chorus comes and goes. I will go up on the bridge of the song. So finally I go up there, and I'll spare all the details, but what ended up happening is I had the biggest spiritual experience I've ever had in my life, where God removed the word that was etched on my forehead. The word was forsaken. He had removed, I'm getting teary as I say this, He had removed the word forsaken from my forehead. And I had this uncontrollable laughter come over me. It was crazy. I kind of looked like a crazy lady, only this time it was really fun and good. And anyway, but my son got to be there. My son got to be there in the moment where the word forsaken had been removed from me and had been replaced with the Lord's joy. And now I can't tell this story without testifying to the power of God and what He does with His people. So to answer your question, to bring it full circle, I think it would be for me is don't underestimate what God can do. Hang on, and don't underestimate what God can do. We don't approach God as a beggar.
Yeah.
We're His kids. He loves us and He does want good things for us. And so just hang on. Hang on. It's coming. The good that God has for you, the best that God has for you, it is still coming.
Yeah. So you're a coach and not a sports coach, right?
No. Raiderette, hello.
Oh, right. You're a life coach. You're a betrayal coach, like betrayal trauma coach. You're a body image coach, all the things. And you help women in so many ways. You also have a podcast.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
What is the podcast? Where can it be found? What does your coaching look like? Tell me all the things.
Okay. We're really excited about the podcast. It just launched last week. It's called the Betrayal Recovery Transformation Podcast. It's on all major platforms.
Okay.
And we just dropped our first, what's the word I'm looking for, Miss Podcast? Episode, that's the word, yes.
Yeah.
We just dropped our first episode last week, and it is basically a survival guide.
Yeah.
For the first week. And now next week will be my story, and then it'll be her story. And then we have some really fantastic big hitters in the industry that talk about betrayal trauma and recovering from it coming up. So we're very, very excited for this venture. I really feel like that God is giving back so much of what I feared was going to be lost forever.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to see what happens with that. So we are doing that. We're hoping to put out an episode every other week at this point. And then the betrayal coaching. So we have a website called healingwiththehowies.com. And there, actually, Dan and I will walk with other couples through their journey. And we also do some one-on-one. So he'll work with the husband, or I'll work with the wife, or maybe they're not even married necessarily, just people from different walks of life that have found us here and there. And so we walk them through whatever their process is and whatever their growth looks like for them and where they want to go and the goals that they've set for themselves.
I love that. Well, you've kind of already answered what my last question typically is, but I do want to just give another opportunity for the listener that finds themselves somewhere in your story. Whether it is trauma or betrayal or just whatever struggle, if they find themselves somewhere in something that you said, what would you say to them? Do you have anything to add other than what you have already said?
I think I would say that, first of all, you're not alone. There's so many of us that are ready to come alongside you and walk with you and link arms with you through that journey. If I hadn't been able to ride the coattails of someone who had gone before me, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah.
And Ashley, you and I both know these women. We have these women in our lives, and that's what we're here for. So if you're in the thick of it, reach out, and whether it be here or on our website as well, and get the support and the community that you need. We're not meant to do this alone. You and I both believe that we're broken in relationship, but we're also healed in relationship, and women can be incredible allies for one another. So you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to sweep it under the rug and pretend like it doesn't exist. There's those of us out here who are ready and willing to welcome you with open arms, so your journey doesn't have to look anything like you're doing it alone. You've got a whole community out here waiting to embrace you.
It's true. Your website and podcast will be in the show notes. So for anybody looking, those links will be there. Thank you so much, Jenn, for joining me today. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, Ashley. Thanks for having me. Really glad to be here. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's conversation on the Stories Unveiled podcast. We would love it if you would leave us a rating or a review. If you would like to learn more about Stories Unveiled and our events, go to storiesunveiledconference.com or follow us on Facebook or Instagram at storiesunveiled_. The Stories Unveiled podcast is created in partnership with KTSY and Barefoot Media Ministries. For more encouragement and other podcasts, visit ktsy.org. Have an incredible day and go live unveiled.